Okay, Mr. Murphy, although we do not provide that kind of enhancement, we do have an assortment of modifications that you could choose from that will allow you to perform a number of different tasks. Greetings and welcome to Checkpoint Gaming Gaslands. With this episode, we will cover and consolidate the rules pertaining to that of modifying play in Gaslands. With the scale of the game, it is typically done at 172 or roughly 20mm scale. With that said, players have the option of playing the game with different scales. Since the game is managed through the use of templates, it can be scaled up or down in order to fit different model vehicle sizes. To play the game at 28mm scale, then just print or photocopy the templates at 130% of their original size. But if you want to play at 10mm, 15mm, or micro scale, then just print or photocopy the templates at 70% of their original size. However, if you would like to change the scale of the models and templates beyond what has just been addressed, then feel free to do so. We also look forward to receiving input to these additional scale changes so that we can help proliferate said information to the larger community so that more players can participate in this differing scale size. When changing the scale of models and templates, then you should also scale the play area as well in order to better accommodate the change in model and template sizes. Gaslands is also typically played as player versus player combat. With that said, it is also possible for players to also play the game in teams. If the players decide to play in teams, then the following modifications to the rules will need to be implemented. When it comes to that of pole position, it may never be passed among teammates. Instead, it'll have to be passed to the next eligible player that is found on a differing team. With resolving wipeouts, players may never pivot a teammate's vehicle. The next player not found on the same team will have to pivot the vehicle. Players also cannot pre-measure for their teammates. Doing so will count as a player themselves having touched the movement template. When it comes to the spending of audience votes, the player may consider all team vehicles as their own for the purposes of spending them. When it comes to victory conditions for a given scenario, you will also replace player with team. Accompanying this, there is the possibility that the game can run for too long, thus leaving players bored as they wait for their turn to come back around. If this occurs, there are means for you to correct this. These corrections consist of the following: playing with fewer cans, only allowing 1 or 2 vehicles per player, ignoring the touch it, use it rule, and placing death race gates closer together. You can also divide the players among multiple tables. We have found that this is very useful and we recommend its implementation even for your average game. With fewer cans being available to use, it will limit the types of vehicles that the player can have access to, as well as the weapons, upgrades, and perks that are available. Along the same vein, you can also prevent the players from being allowed to select a sponsor. Having fewer cans and no sponsors can also help people to initially learn the game. But when it comes to that of teaching people, we will leave it up to you on how to go about accomplishing this. With how the game is designed, it is possible for your team to have multiple vehicles working together as long as they come in at the agreed upon number of cans. But with multiple vehicles, each one will need to be dealt with during the gear phase. And if a player has a lot of vehicles on their team, then it will take a fair amount of time for them to go through all of the necessary steps to deal with every one of their vehicles. So limiting the number of vehicles a player is allowed to have can save time when it comes to that of each player going through all the necessary steps for their vehicles. Another way to save time is to abandon the touch it, use it rule regarding the templates. That way, players can adjust and tweak their movement for their vehicle before committing to that given movement template. As a result of this, not as much time will be spent trying to figure out which templates a player will be using when it comes time for their movement step. In regards to death races, if they come across as taking up too much time, then the means to make them occur in a shorter period of time is to move the gates closer to one another. That way, the distance needed to get from one gate to the next will be quicker to traverse, allowing for the race to be completed quicker. The final alteration you can do to make things faster is to divide the players up among multiple tables. That way, there will be less time between player turns. So unless you enjoy sitting around with your thumb up your ass, you won't have to wait all that long before moving again. With dividing up of the players, we recommend having 4 players per table playing against one another. We actually recommend playing with 4-player tables as a general rule, but that may not always be the case when playing. It's just all dependent upon how many people you have playing at any given time. With these corrections, you can use one, some, or all of them, depending upon how you wish to modify the game for quicker play time. It can also depend upon how you play the game itself. If there is a game master, commissioner, tournament organizer, or other singular individual that is running the game who can make such a decision, you can turn to them in order to make said decision. You can also turn to your fellow players and reach a consensus among the group on how to proceed. However you decide, the aforementioned list is how you can deal with a game that is running for too long. You want to make sure that your particular game is optimized for maximum enjoyment. With that taken care of, we can now move on to audience points. This is an optional component of the game, but it can add some extra fun to it. When it comes to that of audience votes, they represent audience participation either from those in attendance or from those watching at home. They can also be seen as being done by the audience cheering or by texting in to give their support. With audience votes, they represent a positive in-game handicap system and are awarded to the player, not to any given vehicle. You can also use any desired means to keep track of your audience votes, and there is no upper limit to how many audience votes a player is able to have. But they must be tracked at the time that they are obtained. You can't go back and track those that you forgot to give yourself earlier. If this occurs, then those audience votes are considered lost. With the awarding of audience votes, they are done so under certain conditions. When one of the player's vehicles is wrecked, the player will then gain one audience vote. And when the player starts a round with no active vehicles on the table, then the player will gain 2 audience votes. When the player has a sponsor that will award audience votes under certain conditions, or the scenario being played will award audience votes, then the player will receive audience votes as determined by the sponsor and/or scenario. With the spending of audience votes, it can be done before activating a vehicle or passing, but this is a single opportunity situation in the phase. This also extends to the players who do not have any qualifying vehicles. With the opportunity to spend audience votes, it happens when the gear phase begins. When being spent, the player may spend as many audience votes as they wish in order to achieve any number of effects that they want. With the spending of audience votes, they can be spent on the following: Burn Rubber, Carpe Diem, Executive Intervention, Reload, Thunderous Applause, and Respawn. With Burn Rubber, it costs 1 audience vote, and it allows the selected vehicle to change its gear either up or down and gain 1 hazard because of it. With Carpe Diem, it costs 2 audience votes, and it immediately moves pole position to a player of their choice, or to prevent it from being moved the next time it would change players. With Executive Intervention, it costs 2 audience votes, and it allows the selection of a given vehicle to immediately gain hazards until it has 5 hazards. With Reload, it costs 2 audience votes and allows a single weapon or upgrade found on a given vehicle to immediately gain 1 ammo. With Thunderous Applause, it costs 1 audience vote and it causes a selected vehicle to immediately gain 1d6 hazards from it. With Respawn, it costs 3 audience votes and allows the selected vehicle that was wrecked during the game to be placed back onto the board. With Respawning, it can only be used when the player has no vehicles in play accompanied by the parameters of the scenario rules. But when the vehicle respawns, its hull points will be reduced by half, rounding down when necessary. Accompanying this, the hull point reduction will only occur once, regardless of how many times the vehicle respawns. In addition to this, different groups will have the possibility of interpreting the rules differently, so if you're joining a group that is different from your own, take that into account. The point of the game is to have fun, and people won't have fun if players constantly challenge the rules, especially if it comes from a newcomer. And if you are the player who always challenges everything, there's a good chance that you won't be invited back to play. So with that said, be an adaptive player so that you can adjust to different dynamics found in different groups. We also see the game as not holding your hand. It gives you enough information on how to play the game, but leaves it up to you on how to go about resolving issues of uncertainty. This is why we have the rule of carnage, to allow players to resolve any issues that come up that aren't otherwise stated in the rules, the official FAQ release, or any official forum that is connected with the game. There is also no formal governing body or organization that makes and releases any formal decisions regarding the game itself or its accompanying rule set. So this leaves the community to govern itself. And though the game's principal backdrop is that of a post-apocalyptic wasteland, players are free to alter this setting if they wish to do so. With this alternative setting, it can be whatever the players wish it to be. We just recommend that the other players agree to this instead of just blatantly forcing it upon them. So with that said, that is what you need to know when it comes to modifying the game. If you like this episode, feel free to give it a like, and if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes that we upload, then go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode, and happy gaming.